Part 2, text to columns. Here I'm going to show you how to split up data or a text string that's in one column. I'm going to show you how to split up that data into multiple columns. For example, you may have one column where the first and last name is as one text string in one column, and you want to split it up where the first name is dropped into one column and the last name in another column. Or another scenario is where the city and state is also in one column, but you want to separate that out into two. And that's actually what we're going to be working with here. So let's go to our Excel file. And the first thing we want to do is let's break up this name. So first I want to auto fit all these columns. So I can do that by selecting that gray box or gray triangle on the upper left and double click anywhere between those columns. You're going to see that double arrow. I'm going to double click, and it's going to auto fit the content of every column based on the longest text string. For example, column C, it's going to find the longest text string and it's going to auto fit content here. So if you notice column B, there's a lot going on here. First thing we notice is this is set up as last name, comma, first name. That's one issue. We want to break that up so the last name and the first name are in two separate columns. Next is you notice the last name, or some of the last names, it's all in capital letters, and it looks like the first name there, some of them are all in lowercase letters. So we're gonna fix those issues with the formula. So let's go ahead and select column B on your keyboard. Let's do shortcut to copy this. So that's Control C, Control Charlie. We're gonna go to column F, and we're gonna do Control V to paste it. Next, we're going to go to data in the ribbon, and we're going to go to data tools. We're going to go to text to columns. You have two options here. The first is the limited option. Second is fixed width. Let's go over delimited to see how that works. So in this case, it's saying, how do you want to split up the information? Do you want to split it up anytime there's a tab, a semicolon, comma, space, or other? The other in this scenario, you can use maybe a special character like an @, as in the case of the email addresses here in column C. Maybe you want to split up that information with the actual email name and then the domain. Maybe column A, where it has the social security numbers, you want to split up the information by the hyphen. In that case here, you would enter a hyphen. For this instance of what we're working with in column F that we have selected, the delimiter, or the character that we want to split the information by, is a comma. If you notice down here, you could see a preview of what that's going to look like. So let's select next. It's going to take you to this window. It's going to say, after we separate this data, we're going to drop the name in one column and then this piece into another column. What is the format? What is the output? Anytime you're working with a non-numerical value, you can go ahead and select general. If you're working with a numerical value, such as in this case, column A, you may want to reconsider, instead of general, you may want to do text. And the reason for that is if there is any leading zeros to this text string, those leading zeros are going to be removed. So I'll show you that in a minute. For now, we're going to say when this information gets separated, let's keep it as a general format. But you have to do that for every column. So for this first column here, we're going to say general. Then we're going to select the second column and we're going to say also keep it as general. And we're going to select finish. So if you notice here, it dropped the last name one column, the first name in another column. Let's go ahead and rename these real quick. Again, if you notice, some of these last names are all in caps and some of them are in what's called the proper format. So let's just get all the content in the proper format. However, we don't have time. It's not practical for us to go down every single row. This could be hundreds of thousands of rows. We don't have time to go into each one and correct it by retyping it. So we're going to do a formula. So column H, let's enter a formula. We're going to, on your keyboard, hit the equal sign, equals, and we're going to type the formula proper. So start typing proper. You're going to notice formula comes up and The explanation for that is converts a text string to proper case. This means the first letter of each word to uppercase and all other letters to lowercase. On your keyboard, you can enter tab to accept that formula, and the tab is on the upper left of your keyboard. Now it's going to say, where is the text located? Well, in this case, it's F, cell F2 is the starting point for that. So we're going to select that, and to close the formula, Shift 0, which is the close parentheses, and enter. Next, you're going to go back into that cell H2. On the lower right corner of that little cell, you're going to see a green box. You're going to hover over it until you get a solid black plus sign, and you're going to double click to flash fill those contents. Now, if you notice column F and compared to column H, column F has some names with all caps, and if you notice column H, it's corrected that problem. So we now have a formula in here. If you notice up here in the formula bar, we want to break that formula because this is going to be our new column for last name. One quick way to do it is while you highlight column H on your keyboard, Control C, and while you still have it selected on your keyboard, hold down Control, then Alt. Alt is a key to the left of that space bar. So again, Control, Alt, and then V for Victor. You're going to get a dialog box, paste special dialog box. On your keyboard, go ahead and select V for Victor again. And it's going to say what you are doing is copying and pasting the content as values. You're breaking that formula. So let's go ahead and select OK. Now if we go into column H, any of those cells again, and we look up at that formula bar, there's no more formula. So you can just copy, paste that into this column, or let's just copy this header name, says last name, and just paste in it here. This is my new column for my last name, column F. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. To delete that on my keyboard is Control and then the minus sign. If you have a 10 key, the minus sign is on the upper right corner of that keyboard. So let's go ahead and delete that. So now we have our last name. Next thing we want to do is same thing on column F here, the first name. If you notice, a lot of those names are in lowercase. So we want to get them to the proper format. So let's go ahead and enter that same formula. If you remember, proper, select cell F2, which is the starting point for the first name, Shift 0, which is the close parentheses, enter on your keyboard. We're going to click cell H2 and we're going to hover over that green box until it's a solid plus sign. Double click to flash fill all the way down that formula while it's still selected on your keyboard. Control C to copy it to your keyboard, and then Control Alt V for Victor, V again to paste special as values and break that formula. So if you notice up here in the formula bar, you have a formula. So let's hit enter, and that formula is now broken. So let's take that first name header, go to H1 and paste it, and column F, we're going to go ahead and delete it. So now we have a very clean last name, first name column. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the location. We want to break this up by city and state into two different columns. So column E, we're going to copy that. We're going to paste it on column H, Control V. While it's still selected, we're going to go to data. Do you remember where we go from here? Data tools, text to column, and delimited. So let me show you what fix with does. It's not going to work for our situation here, but now I want to show you what it does. Let's go to fix with and select next. In this instance, you tell Excel where you want to break up this information. So let's say maybe you wanted to do it after the second character. You would just click there, and it's going to separate that text string just down the middle, or not down the middle, but down after those first two text values. Go ahead and select finish to see what that looks like. If you notice, it went straight down and it looked at the first two characters and it just split the information all the way down. So that doesn't work for us unless the state abbreviation were the first two characters. So let's hit undo. While it's selected, we're going to go to data, text to columns, and we're going to select delimited and next. What is our delimiter? It's that comma again. So we're going to leave it selected. And down here you see a preview that it's splitting up the city and state by that delimiter. Let's select next. And we're going to leave it as general. And we're going to go to the state. We're also going to select general format. We're going to finish. And now we have good clean data here. Before we move forward, we want to check our data here. So let's add a filter in this first row, and you could do it different ways. I like to use a shortcut. So I'm going to select any one of these cells in the first row, and on my keyboard is going to be Control Shift, and the Shift key is right above the Control key. So hold on Control Shift and then L for Lima, and that's going to add a quick filter. I want to click this drop down arrow, and I'm going to quickly scroll down these contents and just make sure the information looks good or in the proper format. Looks pretty good. Nothing looked out of the ordinary. If this was hundreds of thousands of rows, do you remember how to properly fix this? You would just create a formula, select the proper formula, Shift 0, and just autofill that formula all the way down. But we did a quick preview. It looks like this, the location or the city name is all in the proper format already. However, when we go to column I, the state, we notice that it is not in the format we need it to. And the format we need it to be in is everything needs to be capitalized. So I showed you the proper formula. The proper formula only capitalizes the first letter of every word. So that's not going to work here. So I'm going to show you another formula. So in column J, we're going to hit equals, and we're going to type upper. So that first formula comes up, and the explanation there is convert a text string to all uppercase letters. So hit tab on your keyboard to accept. We're going to select cell I2, Shift 0 to close that formula out, enter. We're going to select that cell, hover over the green box, double click to flash fill, and we're going to break the formula. So Control C, Control Alt V for Victor, and then V again, enter. And column I, we're going to go ahead and delete that. We don't need that anymore. So in location, we're going to rename that to city. Column I is the state. So if you notice there's no filter here, I'm going to hit Control Shift L and Control Shift L again to now include this column in my filter. I'm going to select that drop down arrow, and I'm going to quickly just kind of preview here and make sure that everything looks good, and it does. Before I move forward, I'm going to save this real quick. A lot of times when you're working with Excel, a lot of formulas, or maybe you have multiple windows, your computer doesn't have enough RAM to process. Excel tends to freeze. Sometimes when you freeze, it will restart on you. A repaired file can be a hot mess. I want to avoid that, so save often. So quick way to do that is Control S. That's Control S for Sierra on your keyboard. And I'm going to quickly save that. So we've seen how the text to column delimiter works. Well, let's see when we would apply the fixed width delimiter, and also when we would use text instead of general. So on this same worksheet here, you have column A, which is the social security number. Let's go ahead and make a copy of that. So Control C. Let's paste it in column J, Control V. So in this case, let's say we wanted to split up the information in the social security number by every delimiter of the hyphen. You go to data and set text to column. And in this instance, let's go to fixed width. Next. So fixed width would work here because the structure of the social security number is always 3-digit hyphen 2-digit hyphen 4-digit. What we're going to do is we're going to add our own, not delimiter, but we're going to tell it to split this text string every time there is a break. So you add the break by just clicking anywhere on this ruler up here. So in this case, I'm going to select there right after the 3 digits. I'm going to select there after the hyphen, after the 2 digits, and then after the hyphen, I I didn't put that in the right place, so I can drag it to move it to the right place, or I can double click that line I just dropped to remove it and then add it again where I need it. Let's select next, and it's going to say, how do you want the data to be parsed out? Well, instead of general in this instance, I want to label it as text. And the reason for that is, if you notice here in the background column J, that first row, the last 4 characters of that text string have 2 leading zeros. So when I break this information up, if I leave it as general, those leading zeros are going to disappear, and we need those. So a good way to make them stick is to use data format as text. Let me show you what happens if I leave it as general here. Let's select finish. So now you notice that we have the first 3 here, the second part of that text string here, and the third part here. Well, just by looking over at this information, we notice that there are a few cells with only 1 character in that middle value, which is supposed to have 2. And also, if you go to column N, there's a few other cells where the leading zero was omitted. That's when you select the general format. So general, again, should only be used when you have a text, and text should be used when you have a numerical value and it may have leading zeros. So text is a good way to keep those leading zeros. Let's just say we're working with this information. We didn't know any better, and we want to check that this information was parsed out correctly. There's a good formula to check this. So column J should have 3 digits. So in column O, we're going to enter a formula. Let's enter equals, and we're going to type the formula len. Description for that is returns the number of characters in a text string. So we're going to hit tab to accept that, and we're going to select cell J2, shift 0 to close parentheses, and enter. Then we're going to click on that cell, and what are we going to do? That's right, we're going to hover over that green box until it turns into a solid black line. Double click, we're going to flash fill that. And what we want to make sure is that in column O, every cell has a 3-digit, and that's pointing to this column here. So let's quickly add a filter. So I'm just going to anywhere on this header row. I already have a filter, but since I added these other columns, my filter did not extend out. So I just need to undo and then redo my filter. So I do that by Control Shift L for Lima, and then Control Shift L for Lima again. And let me just scroll to the right here, and it did not add the filter where I wanted to. So I'm gonna hit undo real quick, and I'm gonna select row 1. That's where I want my filter. So I'm gonna select Control Shift L for Lima again. I'm gonna scroll to the right, and now I have my filter here. So column O is pointing to column J, and I want to make sure there are 3 digits in the entire column for every cell. So I'm just going to quickly select this drop down arrow, and I should see 3 all the way down, and I do. That's great, but I don't want to stop there. I want to make sure that column 2 also has the correct formula. So I'm just going to call in column O, enter the same formula, len, but instead I'm going to select cell L2, shift 0, enter, and I'm going to drag that formula down all the way, and I'm going to select this drop down arrow, and if you notice, there are some cells with only 1 character. So that tells me that leading zeros disappeared. I'm not going to go any further. I'm going to assume that's the case in column N also, all the way down, that there were leading zeros that were omitted. That text to column with the format of general did not work. So let's see what happens when we do the same thing with a output of text. I'm going to delete this for now. And what I did there is just highlighted those columns from column J to column O, Control minus on your keyboard, and I'm going to grab that social security number again, which is column A. I'm going to copy it, Control C. I'm going to paste it in column J, so that's Control V. And we're going to go to data in the ribbon, text to column. We're going to go to fix width, next, and we're going to add separators here. Here we go. We have separators. Next, this time I want to tell it that I want the output of every column to be text format. I wouldn't say every, I don't care about those hyphens. I care about the columns with the numerical value. That first text string with 3 digits, I got to indicate I want the output to be text. That middle number, I also have to indicate text. And that last text string as text. Let's go ahead and select finish and let's see what happens. Now, if you noticed the output here, you notice there's a green triangle on the upper left of every one of these cells. If I select the cell, you're going to get this little exclamation dialog box. And what it's saying is that there might be value in that cell that's recognizing it as numbers. So it's asking you, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep it as is, or do you want to convert it to a number? If I want to keep it as is, I don't need to do anything. If you want to convert it to a number, you can select this little drop down arrow. And the second option here is convert to number. I'm going to select that just so you can see what happens there. And it converts to number, and it just shifts the information to the far right of that cell. So no big deal in column J, converted to number. However, in column N, if we do the same thing, we click that drop down, we convert to number, you're going to see that those leading zeros are going to disappear. We want those leading zeros, which is why we specified to keep these values as a text. So let me just go ahead and undo that. And here we have what we need. So I'm going to select column K and delete that, which is a hyphen, column L, and I'm going to delete that, so control minus. And now we have our social security number here, and we could just rename this as SSN1, SSN2, and SSN3. So we'll use this later on when we're creating our unique customer ID.